What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring anymore. And today, I am joined by Coach Rich Burnett. Rich is best known for inventing the Plyomat with other colleagues. Now, the Plyomat is something that you can get your hands on, and it is a fast, valid, reliable way to measure vertical jump. Coach is not only known for that, he works in the private sector. And when you listen to this conversation, you're going to hear a very in-depth way that Rich evaluates these athletes and takes them through. It is not a car wash where it's just, oh, come in, buy some sessions. No, the things that they are doing at Triple F is very impressive. You're going to learn about a great way to be working in the private sector. So if you're considering that, this is an episode for you. And if you want to learn more about the Plyomat, this is the episode for you too. Rich, so thank you for coming on. And we were just talking about Triple F off air. The first thing I want to talk to you about is these progress reports. Like, these are impressive, man. Who put them together? How did y'all come up with it? Because if I'm a parent, I'd be blown away.
Yeah, who is me? And it's been over the course of probably 10 years. I was at Great Atlanta Christian School when Schofield and I, Gary Schofield, first determined that we needed a better way to truly take all this data, do what we want with it for the purpose of differentiation. Whenever I talk about some of these reports and things, I always talk about the primary purpose of it at the time, and still is a primary purpose now. All of us in this field are after differentiation in a group setting. Like, we're all trying to individualize as best we can in when we have 15, 20 athletes at a time. Like, that's the end goal for logistics and meeting people's needs, and it's always a problem. It's always an issue. We're constantly, how do I give blank so-and-so what he needs or she needs, even though we only have an hour and 15 minutes, and here we are with only so much equipment. So with that, you need to first assess what people's needs even are. So you're running through these KPIs that you determined are good for you. You have your standards, hopefully, of what is a good score to show what an athlete's needs even are. Are they glaring or not? And you need standards of the data that you have in order to do that. So all that needs to happen within a place of either a spreadsheet or an AMS to automate and guide then the program that should come out of that. And going back to how we did things at GEC, Schofield had called it a block 0, block 1, 2, 3, 4 program. That's pretty common terminology these days, where your block 0 kids are like, man, you don't even have KPIs on them yet. Like, they just need to focus on quality of movement. But as things progress and they get better and these KPIs really start to stand out, you need those quick objective measures to help athletes even see their own results, see the progress being made. But again, going back to differentiation, hoping to also put up on one slide or in the room, instead of everybody doing the whiteboard workout, we have multiple cards, multiple sheets, and we're trying to fill different buckets at the same time. So in saying all that, what started out as a pretty messy experience of learning basic Excel skills. When I say basic, I'm even just referring to the index match of pulling one thing into the report so you can actually like flesh out and visualize clearly what it is that you want to show and why. GAC, if you know anything about it, where Schofield and I is a really nice private school, and people spend a lot of money to go to school there, and parents would need to see pretty much that return on investment, even with a strength conditioning class. We took a lot of pride in basically reinforcing how valuable our program was and our training was by also showing those same results, the same way we would to sport coaches at the Division I level. So it didn't really change that much for me going from collegiate to high school in that sense, in terms of showing results, showing progress. It's great for the kids too, but it took a while for me to optimize it, make more sense, because the first one I ever made, I just was looking at it yesterday, actually going down a rabbit hole, and I was like, what is this? I couldn't even hardly interpret it myself. I had the craziest graphs, and it was just so busy. And in my mind, I understood it, but to an athlete or parent, it would have been just totally lost. At GAC, it got better and more refined, and I was able to create these individual reports pretty quickly, all through Google Sheets and YouTube helping me out along the way. And then now pretty much restarting completely at Triple F with new tests, new format. And I was like, let me just start from scratch. So I basically took all the previous knowledge and infrastructure of infrastructure may be the wrong word, maybe functionality of how I pulled things and had the sheet talk to each other, but made it so much cleaner to now the version you see now that I've posted a few times. Just, again, trying to make it as simple as possible, but to help really establish this level of needs analysis that truly gets fleshed out in the room when we are training. Athletes have their individual cards that are also associated with those reports that clearly state what program they're in, how they scored on the acceleration profile, how they scored on the upper body strength profile, on the force plates. Like, it's all right there. It's just from their last assessment, there it is. Here, even some QR codes that you can scan for some flexibility interventions based on the posture readiness evaluation that we did, which is basically like a remade version of the FMS and SFMA and the TPI test. I stole a few things from that. And so it's all right there. Like, it's straightforward, as objective as we can get it. And it just makes a clear roadmap for kids when now they're investing in the product we have at Triple F, and parents are investing in it, to see what their deficiencies are and how we can truly help them to get to that point. So I know that's a long way to get to explaining why it exists and why it's so valuable to us, but man, it really is the bread and butter of like our whole program. Like, everything falls on those reports, and it's just a little messy sometimes with how some of those sheets can work. But thankfully, I've taken the time to do it well, and now my staff could even navigate the same spreadsheet and print out cards and things like that. So
let's start with the KPIs. What are they? Do they depend upon the age of the athlete?
Right now, no. Eventually, because we've only been open 2.5 years, eventually I do want to have a branch off and like at a second level of our assessment. So our assessment takes about an hour, and whether you're 11 or 18, it's all the same. So we go through ultimately 13 different tests. Some of them are, when I say test, are captured within the same test, all right, or 13 different metrics is the best way to summarize that. And they're categorized in eight ways. We have size, which is essentially biological age, and that's a rabbit hole we can go down in a little bit. That's from C Arsenal and just some of the information that they had with separating an athlete's chronological age with their biological age. And that's a really smart and intelligent way to train athletes that are young athletes that you don't really know how mature they are yet. So anyway, that's factored in, as well as height and weight ratio. So that already is scored in and of itself. We don't do body composition or anything in that. I probably would if it made more sense, but that kind of summarizes the size and age bucket. That's number one. Number two is flexibility. So it's about a 10-minute screen that I had mentioned that's scored similarly to the FMS on a score of 1, 2, or 3. The highest score you can get is a 35. Does a really good job of just truly pointing out joint range of motion, whether it's good or not. Some of these FMS tests, which is another rabbit hole we can go down, are a little too complex of a movement where you don't even really know what the issue is. If we're just truly looking at joint flexibility, something like that is ideal. So that one gets scored. Like I said, it's a 10-minute kind of little battery that's worked in on the front end. And then we move on to our lower body power assessment, which rather than, because I said we only have an hour, rather than taking an athlete through all these lower body strength tests like back squat or front squat or whatever, we just have them jump on the force plates. So we do use Hawkin dynamic force plates. We do a counter movement jump. That's body weight. I had used a weighted version of that test too that I decided to scrap. Didn't really tell me any more information than I needed, but in my brain, I wanted to basically profile lower body power and say, okay, here's what your counter movement jump is with your body weight. Here's what it is with plus 25% of your body weight added to you, whether it was dumbbells or a barbell. And then I even got so far with a few athletes to try out 50% of your body weight added to you and what you can jump with that. So although it was a cool part of the assessment that we did early on, again, it didn't really tell me anything more than the body weight was telling me already. So we take from that relative braking net impulse and relative propulsive net impulse, as well as the height. So height alone, which was determined by body weight and some of these other factors, the relative propulsive net impulse really tells us with their current body weight how much.
Get CEUs faster, cheaper, and more convenient than ever before with Strength Coach Network. Hey, it's Justin here to tell you about how Strength Coach Network can now help you out with our premium membership and CEUs to the NSCA and CSCCa. Upon signing up for our premium membership, you will get 2.0 or 10 CEUs immediately. That is an entire year's worth of CEUs that you are able to access from the convenience of your office. No traveling for conferences, no waiting on flights, no eating out, no expensive hotels. Just the good stuff from great coaches. Now, if you need extra CEUs for past years during the reporting period, we can bundle Fundamentals 1 or 2, which also come with 2.0 or 10 CEUs to your purchase. That way, you're able to take care of your CEUs for the best price, most convenient, and learn from some of the best coaches. If you want more help with this, email us at service@Strength Coach Network or visit us at strengthcoachnetwork.com, and I would be delighted to help you out.
Impulse are they carrying out on the propulsive end as well as the braking. And those two have been really helpful, working with Drake from Hawken a lot on determining those metrics in particular as to the ones that we're actually using to score. It tells us a lot about the athlete without having to necessarily max back squat them, which I don't feel good doing that with the 12-year-old anyway. So we avoid all that, which is awesome. But we do go to the weight room next for the upper body strength profile, which is bucket number 4. And I have a kind of a special protocol of the athlete's body weight. So I try to normalize everything where they use 30% of their body weight for bench, 45, 60, 75, 90, and 105 is the top, which I just felt like it's not necessary to go beyond that because I'm capturing speeds using Vitruve on each of those. And then I could pretty much run a linear regression to determine area under the curve as well as just total power and see like what their power profile is from upper body standpoint. And so again, like I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how could I get power and strength both in one test, and knowing that I only have an hour, and I feel confident with this protocol that I have with bench as well as this protocol that I have with the force plate jumps. And so far, so good, man. Like we have training bars for the kids, and we have some kids that are like 87 pounds, never bench pressed before in their life. It's like, awesome. We'll use a 15-pound bar. Let's learn. Maybe we only get to the 30% part of the protocol, and that's it. We already have good information on you. Cool. Next time we do this, hopefully it's better. But we do it all safely in a small group setting, and it's pretty empowering for the kid to just already get to have their hands on that level of kind of technology and that depth of assessment. And it's also my opportunity to sell them on why max strength on your bench is limited as to telling us how good of an athlete you are, and that a protocol like this with seeing how much power you have is more telling. And like that area under the curve, and I usually write on their sheet, draw like a little explanation of all the square footage underneath this linear regression that we have here. That's where we want to grow and get bigger. And that's because you're moving lightweight fast and heavyweight more as well. Like it's not just about how heavy you can lift something slow, but we're after all this stuff too in between. And then the light bulb clicks, have that awesome paradigm shift hopefully in their brain, especially when it's like a 17-year-old football player that's only max benched in his weight room at school up until that point. It's like a cool opportunity to educate them on the benefit of like speed strength and strength speed and just building all of that and not just max strength. And so moving on, we have agility, which is just a 10-5 test. I like that better than the 5-10-5 because it just allows them to truly hone in on that one break, that one change of direction. So I set the Brower timers at the 5-yard mark. It's also called the 5:05.
Yep.
I call it the 10-5. They self-select how fast they go into it. And I always encourage them, like, man, don't go super fast right away. Feel this out. I want to, because this is going to expose how well you make that turn right there. And I don't make them do a hand touch. It's just a foot touch. We have some nice turf at our facility that allows them to break on it pretty quickly. And man, I really love that test. I've been using it for a long time. It's so simple. We do the left side, the right side. We average them both together. And it's, again, pretty telling of just how well they can get in and out of that break. And I think there's a Daniel Bove who's with the Pelicans, who's done a lot of just biomechanical analysis on that exact test too, that he uses for his guys. And just to make sense of, again, if you're going to choose a test for agility, which is a gajillion that you could conjure up in your brain, like might as well just make it as simple as possible. And of course, it doesn't tell you everything about it, but at least tells you how well they navigate that quick 180 turn and the wherewithal to anticipate that turn well and to have the strength to get in and out of it. And it's usually our best athletes that do that well, regardless of size. And then we have speed and acceleration are pretty much worked into the same test. We run a 40 from a 2-point stance. We have a 55 yards of Mondo track outside our facility. So I set up lasers at the 5, the 15, the 30, and the 40. And so I profile all of that and determine acceleration as well as top speed. So they're scored on both. Like, how well are you actually accelerating through 5 yards, 15, 30, as well as what's just your top speed at the very end of that sprint. And so those are pretty simple, pretty objective to throw in there. And then lastly is RSI, of course. So I just refer to it as elasticity. It's just a 5-jump bilateral pogo test. And that's also a rabbit hole deal to go down. Of probably more needs to be established with determining body weight as a factor in that too. But the standards are still what they are. Athletes who can interact with the ground better than others tend to score really well on that. But it's another one of those anticipatory deals of, like with the 10-5 test, I know the ground is coming. Am I able to create enough stiffness in that key moment to lower my ground contact as well as still get a lot of force out of it? And if we're going to touch on Plyomat later, I'll share a few just insights and stories as to why I just fell in love with RSI to begin with back in the college ranks 10 years ago. And it was not a hard sell for me because it was like our best athletes had the best RSIs. And so that's when I just realized, like, this is something we have to measure. And there's a bunch of ways to measure RSI as well. We've chosen to stick with the 5-hop or the 5-jump rather, continuous pogo, but there's some single leg ones that we do as well. And we're all pioneering new stuff in that world, man. We're all trying to figure out what RSI is really telling us, which RSI tests are actually have the most carryover transfer to some field-based tasks. And it's pretty cool to just collect all this data on kids and start to see how things are shaping up. But yeah, that's it. Those are the 8 things. I know it takes a while to explain all those, but in that, I have a radar chart that kind of fans out their shape and shows us poor flexibility, really good upper body strength, and so forth. And it's just such a good visual for kids just to see and be like, wow, I really am tight, or like I'm really small, or like I'm really slow. And the linemen are funny because they're always like this here and then to the side. Like it's like size and upper body power. That's their shape. That your left tackle or right tackle that's committed to play at a Division I institution, they're more than just that little up and to the side. They've got elasticity, they're fast, they're explosive, they're athletic. And that's what I'm always trying to like encourage, using those same visuals of athletes that quote unquote have it, right? And they're well-rounded. Man, this athlete is going to compete here. He just got drafted by the Red Sox out of high school. Look how athletic he is. And that's what it's all about, man. You'll know in this field, we're more than just strength and conditioning. Like our goal is to make the athlete as well-rounded as possible, which is really freaking hard to do because you only have so much time. But we pride ourselves in these 1.5, 2-hour sessions where we try and have a thread of everything through, and where the athlete is going to get agility work, is going to get speed work outside or on the shred mill and lift, and pretty much pack it all in, especially if they're only coming 2 days a week. Like we have to get as much done when you're in here because private sector life is just that way. There's a lot of places that will sell you on 45-minute sessions or an hour sessions, but they may only be filling 2 or 3 buckets. When we got to be intentional about the time that we do have and try and get as much done as we can. These kids, they need a lot.
Okay, before I get into that one, I'm going to come back to how long you train your athletes. But before that, how do you not get too caught up in comparing athlete to athlete with all of that data? Because when I know, and our coaches out there are like, hey, athlete A, it's important how athlete A compares to athlete A down the road. What's up, everybody? Taking a quick break from the show to talk about one of our sponsors, TeamBuildr. I've been using TeamBuildr since 2019 when I was at Towson. I still use it with my remote athletes. I also use it at Goldfinch, which is the private sector gym I train at, and we use it at Centennial, which is the high school that I'm working at. Now, if you're printing on lift cards because you say, oh, I can't afford TeamBuildr, Guess what? TeamBuildr has a pre-written grant that you can locate on their website. You simply change the name of you, your organization, and the areas that they highlighted, and they can help you get TeamBuildr at your facility, your university, whatever it is, so that way you can optimize how you train your athletes with this software. Now, TeamBuildr is also a part owner in the Plyomat. The Plyomat is something that I utilize at Goldfinch, and it helps you be able to see how high somebody jumped, the ground contact time, and RSI. You can get all that conveniently right there. You can reach out to your rep from TeamBuildr to be able to get more information on the Plyomat. It's fast, it's reliable, it's convenient, and it's trusted by coaches worldwide. Check them out as well as TeamBuildr in the link down below. What are some of your, because I know I've been guilty of it. Hey, all right, how does this athlete looks like this, that, like, how do you not do that? Or is that the right way to do it and I'm wrong? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a really good question, man, because I feel like I've gone in and out of this thought process for a while over the years. And I'm pretty much at a point now, especially we just hosted a recruiting seminar at Triple F last Sunday. And if we're just being honest, man, like many people spend the dollars that they spend to send their kid to blank training facility so that they can increase their likelihood of getting a college scholarship or increase the likelihood of being better than they are in that current state, and being like, we're not in the business, at least we're not. Triple F is not in the business of just taking your money and just promise you something. And when even with the information that we have, like we can pretty clearly communicate to a parent or a kid what their likelihood is of actually making it to the next level. And a lot of it is just when you do compare an athlete to another. And dude, we've been doing this for a long time, you and I. If we're good about collecting the data, we can infer some pretty powerful things about an athlete with having been at the collegiate level, having access to data from all over, and saying, look, this is where you are. This is where an athlete who is even at the University of the Cumberlands up the road, and he is 6'3", 285, and doesn't play on that team. That's a Division II institution. But he's athletic, he's smart, he knows the game. He started on varsity. He was second team all region. Those are the things that I think are okay to use when you are comparing athlete A to athlete B, just to educate people on what their definition of success should be. So that's a long way of saying, what is your definition of success for you as an athlete? Because if you think I have to play in the NFL, then it's okay. Maybe let's take a step back and go one step at a time as to what you for sure can probably accomplish with what God's given you and how hard you've worked up to this point. But if you don't have that other data to support some of those educational opportunities, then we're all just hoping and guessing. And I would like to think that having done this for 15 years now, I can do a lot less hoping and guessing and just being honest with people. And that has to do with some of this profiling stuff. So with our population here at Triple F now, it's been 2.5 years that we've been doing this exact testing battery. And I'm super anal about how it all gets done and how all the data gets collected. And we try to use some of the best technology to prevent any issues of bad data. We're using force plates for a reason, and we're investing a lot and to do this the right way. Because 5 years from now, man, I want to be very confident with some of the things that I'm saying in these educational opportunities, especially as we've had some really stud athletes come through our doors and have done these same assessments on them. We've had professional athletes come and do these same assessments. We've had 12-year-olds do these same assessments. Like, when you have the same testing battery for this really diverse population, you could start to see some really cool stuff. And in saying that, it does, I think, support the rationale for comparing athlete A to athlete B, especially when athlete A is in that pretty much in the same shoes or the same circumstances and has the same goals, but this is how far off they are. And for me, I have no problem doing that, because in the latter end of that conversation, it's also, but man, like, life is more than just you feeling like I have to achieve blank and be a college athlete. Like, why are you an athlete to begin with? What benefit are you getting from being in this sport? And it just gets their mind thinking about other areas of success and what's attainable and the experiences behind it and everything. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're only training high-level athletes that are going to make college or going to get college scholarships. A majority of the kids that train in our facility are not going to make it. They're not going to get to that point, and that's okay to say out loud. And that's what we communicated at the recruiting seminar too. I mean, literally host the seminar for parents to come and learn more about the recruiting process and the reality, especially behind football recruiting, which is just a disaster. We had a volleyball coach there to help explain some of the volleyball recruiting things that you need, the nuances, baseball recruiting. It's all so different from each other. And you talk about Twitter and having an account and what are the things that you can do to make yourself stand out? Do I need to go to 17 camps in the summer, or is 3 enough? So with all that being said, we can at least help the part of the process that has to do with athleticism and being the best athlete you can be in long-term athletic development, and what it would look like for a 12-year-old who can commit to this long-term play of investing in this type of training and ensure that it's a great environment for them to grow. And what I tell them is like being in a crock pot for a long time. And then also have the realistic conversations with the juniors and seniors who are coming to train with us for the first time. So I get fired up, man, about middle school kids, because you start to see that talent early on and just the potential behind it. And it's just refreshing for me, because you think the highest level of strength conditioning is like professional, but I'm really enjoying working with these younger athletes and just truly giving them the edge that they need to probably attain a college scholarship when the time comes, even though they're only 12 or 13 at the time, because they have the skill and now they're just getting freaking athletic like crazy, living in our facility 4 or 5 days a week, training their butts off, just getting strong, explosive, staying flexible, staying limber, learning what grit is. Like, it's just, to build all that into these young athletes is just so rewarding. It's awesome.
I think you did a great job talking about how to use data the right way. So any of our listeners out there, coaches, that is the good way to use data to compare athlete to athlete. Hey, yeah, realistically, this is where you're currently at. And you could even be like, hey, if those are your goals, now you know what you need to improve upon, start getting to work, because this is where you're at.
And that's the point of it, man. We show those reports to further add value to what we offer as a business. Like, we're our training facility. Like, our job is to train you. I prefer to use the word develop more than train, but we are stacking training sessions. To me, it's not semantics. Like, develop, the word develop does mean a whole different kind of over-encompassing thing, as opposed to just training. Training is just part of it. Development is also the sports med piece, the mental side, the consistency of it, the assessments that we do quarterly. So before you hit record, we were talking about how busy my life's going to be in the next 2 weeks, because I'm so committed to this assessment process. And this is now our winter assessment period. So for 2 weeks, all of our members, 160, 70 of them, can come in at any of these different times in a group-based setting, get all their testing done, right? The force plate jumps, the sprint on the track, they do it all. We have multiple coaches there stationed out to record all the data. And then I'm making sure it all gets entered correctly. I produce all the reports. I have this massive Google Drive folder where athlete A has their folder where I drop a new report in, boom, it's ready. Athlete B, drop a new report in, boom, it's ready. And they all have access to their own folder that they can see their new report and see a comparison report to the most recent test to the current one. And then it shows all the ones even before that. We have athletes now that have been with us for 2.5 years, since they were 12, 13 years old. And to see that transformation, of course, is really awesome and really rewarding, but it just continues to reinforce the value of what we offer, which is training at the highest level and some of the best resources for a middle school or high school kid that you can find, at least on this side of the country, for sure. Like, we take a lot of pride in what we've invested in and the facility that we've designed. And it's been a lot of work, man, but we're different. We're pretty high level and pretty in depth with how seriously we take things. And we don't just sell like a 10-pack session. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't actually buy that here with us. Like, you have to commit to us for 6, 9, 12 months at a time. And it's because we develop you and I can't guarantee that development's going to happen if you're only with us for 10 sessions. You could probably get one of the buckets faster, but we're all, or better rather. You can get a little bit more speed gain in those 10 sessions possibly, or you get a little bit more muscle mass. But man, like, we want to sell parents on the whole picture and showing those previous results of other athletes that they also look up to. We just had a baseball player just commit to Tennessee as a junior, throws 95. Here's what his numbers are like. You think you got what it takes to commit to a national championship winning program and play baseball in front of 15,000 fans? This is what it looks like, man. And it's affirming as a strength coach because all the stuff that I chose as KPIs that I thought was valuable over the years actually are. They're legit. Like they really show who the
What's up, everybody? Taking a quick break from the show to talk about one of our sponsors, Hawken Dynamic. I've been using Hawken Dynamics ever since I was at Towson. Still utilize it today when I'm at the private sector at Goldfinch. Even brought the plates from Goldfinch over to Centennial to do some force plate testing with the football team there. We've done force plate testing with other high school athletes. It is something that you need to get. If you want more help with it about how to practically use it and you want to reach out to us, feel free to reach out to us at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com. Not only do I utilize it with lower body assessments, I use it with upper body assessments, plyo push-ups, prone Y assessments. You can also utilize it for what I call an upper body isometric mid thigh pull, where essentially you're doing a push-up at the strongest range and you're pushing into an immovable force, so a barbell, same way you do an isometric mid thigh pull. Like I said, been using them for years. Valid, reliable. The customer service is fantastic. Go check out Hawken Dynamic in the link down below, and you will not be disappointed.
the absolute studs are, and that's what you want. You want to create a system that people get rewarded as an athlete by being athletic, but sometimes we can get carried away with choosing KPIs we thought were important, but don't actually carry over. And that's a tough thing. Like actually choosing the test that you want is probably the hardest part of this process because you have to be pretty confident that actually tells you that this athlete is good at their sport. You know what I'm saying? It's not as simple as bench squat, deadlift, because you can be really good at those three things, but actually be pretty terrible at baseball. So going through that true audit of all the things that I've seen over the years and choosing these tests accordingly, because I felt like that they were the most telling metrics as to whether or not an athlete is truly as athletic as possible and good at their sport, which is, like I said, can be pretty different across the board with all these different sports and athletes we have. But for the most part, it's been pretty spot on.
So for anybody listening, then, are you not having coaches or athletes and parents that have a lot of different things where they're actually able to devote, that long of training with you? Because some of the coaches that do work in the private sector are like, man, I don't have to, I don't have that ability because Johnny's getting dropped off at training and then is going somewhere else. Is that not the world that you're living in? Because it sounds really nice.
Yeah, it is. And there are a few places in town that are quote unquote competitors, but sometimes those are just a better fit for other people. When you think about an analogy to use to describe in the private sector world some of the different options that there are available, we often, as we were building this place, talked about, because you're selling like this whole system to a parent. It's not just because who are so used to just buying sessions and like, hey, I want to get faster. Can you get my 40 time better? Okay, 5-pack, 10-pack. Can I train with you? Opening their mind up to this whole perspective shift of what it truly takes to be a durable athletic player for your sport. And we use the analogy of Ruth Chris versus Outback or something like that. Not that it's a matter of luxury, but it's just a matter of like care and concern. And like you have chefs behind this stuff that are actually like looking at the athlete with these metrics, designing the menu. The way that we actually do our programming is pretty sophisticated and dialed in to check as many of these boxes as that we want in a short amount of time, because logistically that's a lot. We have a lot of in-season adjustments for athletes that are training in season, and how are we taking care of them during that time of the year, as opposed to come and train with me. This is the drills that we're doing, and there you go. It's just like the set menu. You have the line cook that's just whipping it up. Somebody that's 19 years old who's just putting you through the drills and moves on. That may not be hurting the athlete, but and they actually might be really benefiting from that. But is there a better way? And that's in our opinion, yes, there is. And it's just to take more time and to have enough personnel and people like me that want to look at the numbers and want to really evaluate you as an athlete and guarantee that we are getting you better. Because as soon as people are afraid to do this type of assessment as a business owner, and I don't blame them, because it holds you accountable, man. As soon as I put these numbers down, we're like, all right, here's all your numbers. So, well, shoot, we better freaking get these numbers better, or else if they're showing up 4 or 5 days a week and none of this got better, Like you're really putting yourself out there as to whether or not your product is any good or not. And so what I'm very clear with parents and kids that we're all accountable in this process. I am, you are, as a kid, the parent is, we're all a team, and our job together is to make sure that we're getting these numbers better, but we're willing to take full responsibility of that because of your investment into this training system. And we want to guarantee that it happens. So thankfully they all do get better when the ones that are consistent and come and train, the ones that were real excited in the beginning to sign up and do this whole long-term thing, but maybe only came once a week for a few weeks. Of course, they're going to be disappointed in some of the numbers when they retest again because they just didn't work as hard as some of the other kids. But yeah, man, I think the best strength coaches and practitioners on the planet are the ones that are willing to just really put the numbers out there and not be afraid to show that sport coach or said coach or parent, this is what we're committing to. Here are the deliverables. Like anything else in other industries of contract labor, if you will. It's, man, you sign up for something and you expect to see results in that. And I'm willing
paid me to improve X. I better be able to show that X improved.
Yep. As long as they can do their part and commit to us the same way we commit to them and work around schedule. And that's why we offer so many training times. Like you can come at 6:15 a.m. Monday through Friday. Winter break, spring break, summer, we offer an 11:30 a.m. and a 1:30 a.m. session. We have two coaches at every single session, even at the 6:15. There's myself and another coach to handle if we have 20, 25 kids. Some kids will do the run, some kids will do the lift, and we flip them because we want to keep the quality high. We have a 4:15 p.m. session, a 5:45 p.m. session, a 7:15 p.m. session. So in one day, you have 6 times that you can come and train at Triple F within your membership. You could even come on a Sunday or during the day and do pro time is what we call it. And I'll have some stuff for you in TeamBuildr that you can do extra outside of the training that we already had planned that day. So we really try to remove any and all excuses for not at least being present to work, and the assessments will then show the fruit of that labor, right? And it's an exciting time, man. This 2 weeks out of the year are super fun, a lot of energy, just because kids are finally, like, especially the ones that work their butts off, like they can see their vert on the force plates is up a whole inch or two. They did drop their 40 time by 0.2, and it's pretty sweet. And those are the ones that I love just to put on a pedestal, shout from the rooftop. We do a top 10 most improved acknowledgement where we print out a sweet graphic of said athlete, all their numbers and how much better they got. Did they advance to a new program from fortified to fast? And we print them out and put them on like a wall in our facility that stays there until the next assessment run. And when we do more assessments, we do another top 10 most improved. So it's a big deal. We make it a big deal. They're the ones who worked hard and earned it. And that's what it's all about, man. That's why we exist. So trying to be as straightforward as possible with, like you said, you pay a certain amount to get better. We're going to deliver on that for sure.
You mentioned the Plyomat before. Let's dive into that and the genesis of it, because a lot of coaches that I know and a lot of our listeners right now utilize it. So let's dive into it.
Yeah, I love your question format, Justin. It's pull the string back and let him go. Love it. Yeah, man. 8 years ago, guess what it was? I had first discovered that our Just Jump mat at Texas A&M Corpus Christi, which is where I was a strength coach at the time, could do RSI testing. And I didn't really know what RSI was at the time, but I was just flicking around on the old Just Jump mat with the modes that are on there, and then it's jump 4 times, right? So it's the four jump mode that a lot of us are maybe familiar with if you've used that thing. And you get on there and it says, okay, step on the mat, and then it says jump 4 times. You jump 4 times, you do it, and then all of a sudden 3 numbers pop up. And this is on the old Just Jump controller. What are those 3 numbers? The number on the left is how high your jumps were across 4. It averages them for you. So your 4 jumps that were averaged. On the right, I believe it's contact time average for all 4 of those. And in the middle is this random number. You're like, what does this even mean? And if you flip through the manual, which is a pretty old school manual that you would get if you purchased a Just Jump, you flick through there, or if you go to the website, you can see it. It calls it the explosive leg power factor, ELPF. And Paul Macavjack, who created the Just Jump mat 30 years ago, 1991, is pretty much when he first released the product in Huntsville, Alabama, which is where he was at the time. He's an electrical engineer. His daughter Laura and he were both electrical engineers who basically ran the business, and I know all this. I'll get the reason why I have all this information about who they are is because I actually was close with them at one time and called it the explosive leg power factor, mostly because he wanted to incorporate ground contact time. Like, I don't know if somebody had advised him at the time when he first implemented this mode in there, but he was like, vertical jump isn't just enough.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about one of our sponsors, Powerlift. I used Powerlift when I was at Harvard, Maryland, and the University of Iowa. I was also part of the staff that had the new weight room at the University of Iowa, the 32 rack, beautiful facility. I was a part of that. I also have Powerlift's equipment nowadays. Powerlift Strong, made here in the great state of Iowa in the great country of the United States. They're able to work with you on any customizations that you need, logos, height, whatever it is, the limitations that you have. Their equipment is strong. The people there, they're very good people. Check them out in the link down below. And if you have any questions on how to work with them, reach out to us at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com, and we would be delighted to help.
How do I also incorporate ground contact time to tell me how explosive an athlete is? So we all refer to that as being explosive. This is when plyometrics were definitely a thing, and we were talking about the shock method and everything else, but we weren't really referring to it as like stiffness or elasticity or maybe a stress shortening cycle. So we're always throwing these different terms around, and explosive one of them. And so explosive leg power factor was basically Paul in the firmware had looked at flight time divided by contact time, and that was your score. So you're seeing jump height, though, on the just jump mat, and you're seeing contact time. So you're like, well, that math doesn't add up because I'm dividing jump height by contact time, but that's not what the score is. So before he converted flight time, which is how switch mats work, it just measures time in the air, to jump height, it was that flight time divided by contact time, which is what gave you that score, which is what we now know as RSI, like Reactive Strength Index. So again, what was in that firmware was old, like who knows how long ago that 4-jump mode was put in there. Could have been 30 years ago, definitely before I ever first used a just jump mat. But I like really clued in on it as like a viable test for my athletes at the time. And this was all just like self-exploration, like using this just jump mat, like I said, 8 to 10 years ago, and just playing with it with my athletes. And I was like, man, this is actually pretty cool. Like, it's more than just height. We're actually going to see how springy an athlete is too. So I ran an experiment. I grabbed one of those small whiteboards and I put it in my weight room, and I had a contest. And I said, all the athletes that came through the facility, which is track, volleyball, basketball, you name it. We had everybody but football at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. And it said, jump 4 times and write down your score. I just wanted to be like straight up. I just wanted to see who was going to score the highest on this test. And lo and behold, our best athletes, our number 1 singles tennis player, our top scoring forward for the soccer team, for our ladies soccer team that we had, our middle blocker who was an All-American, and then some of our best track athletes, male and female, as well as some of our best basketball players. This is across the board in an Olympic setting for Division I athletes who didn't know anything about this test, how to game it or whatever. They just did the jumps and wrote down their score. Those athletes that I mentioned that were legitimately our best performing athletes in the Southland Conference scored the highest. So it was, and male or female, didn't matter. Some of our females actually had higher scores than the males. And that All-American that I was talking about was hitting like a 3.2 or 3.3 on the just jump mode, or on the 4-jump, which if you have experience with that, you know how good of a score that is. The highest I've ever seen is a 3.5 or 3.6. And Paul himself told me that the highest he's ever seen on the 4-jump mode with the just jump controller was by Dennis Rodman, who had like 3.6 or 3.7. So it's cool when you appreciate the history behind this piece of technology, which is the just jump mat, and what it established for us for decades, and being used by the Chicago Bulls and Alabama football having 12 of them 8 years ago and wearing those things out. Chinese Olympic Committee had 12 of them. Like, the just jump mat, it's all over the place. Like, it's all over the world. They've sold thousands of them probably at this point. Paul and his daughter Laura, again, sold them out of their garage and their humble abode in Huntsville, Alabama. Several companies offered to buy them out. They refused. And so my relationship with them started when I got to GAC, because here I am just going nuts over this RSI stuff and this ELPF. And this is like circa 2015, right? And I'm just losing my mind over it. This is the real deal. How do I incorporate this more as a test instead of just a Vertec, which is what we had been using at that point? And then I just went to this rabbit hole of RSI and stiffness and elasticity. And till this day, it's one of my largest collections of research on my Google Drive. It's like I poured in over 100 research studies into this folder. And it's actually like how you and I got connected early on, Justin, because I know you did some RSI stuff for your dissertation. And it was right around that time where it was not blowing up, but it was like, what is RSI? It just started to come on the scene. And so I got to GAC, I left Corpus Christi, took a job in Atlanta, and I was telling Gary, I was like, look, we have to get some just jump mats. Like, he had one at the time. And I was like, we need more. We need to use these in training. We need to have athletes be scored on their plyometric ability. Because basically what I was obsessing over was like, we are now able to quantify plyos. Like, how good is our plyometric program, or how effective is it even if we can't even really test it because we're not incorporating ground contact time. So I want to see how well an athlete responds to the ground, and the 4-jump mode really does a good job of that. And so learning from Gary early on, I learned that he's really good about asking for things, and he was with who he was at the time in the profession and still is. There's a lot of people that donated some stuff to GAC just because they wanted people to know that Gary Schofield used it and validated it. So I was like, let me give it a shot. Let me send an email to Paul himself and say, hey, I'm 2.5 hours away from you. I'm in Atlanta. Would love to come up with some sort of agreement where you guys can donate 4 mats or something to the school. And then I help you guys like consult on some different features that I think the product should have, because I'm also seeing from a distance Fusion Sports. Remember them? They had the mat, and they had an app with it and Bluetooth, and you could customize RSI, but it was $3,000 at the time. So I'm seeing this other product that is doing more of what I would want to do with RSI, but I really love y'all's product. Like, how can we maybe re-engineer it, make it a little bit better? And so we had this 2-year relationship where Paul and his daughter would drive from Huntsville to Atlanta, and I would advise them on some different things, and I would show them like a drill that I'm doing with an athlete that's a plyometric drill, and they would think it's great, and they would go back to Huntsville, work on some things, come back with a prototype. But during that time, though, I just had noticed that Paul's energy, he was maybe in his 70s at the time, if I had to guess, and that was 8 years ago. His energy towards re-engineering and producing new things was not as high. And a lot of what I was consulting him on, even just redesigning the website, like anything that I was like, man, I really think we should do blank. And I was writing an article for them, just all fell flat. And after those 2 years went by, I couldn't, he pretty much ghosted me. I couldn't get a hold of him anymore. I wasn't answering his phone calls, emails. We had 2 of our mats break. And then so now I'm feeling like just at a stalemate of all this energy I have towards RSI and being excited about it, yet I felt like I couldn't move forward. I didn't have the money to buy force plates or the Fusion Sports jump mat. And when I say money, I'm talking about at the school I was at, I was willing to maybe purchase it myself because of how much I wanted to see this thing grow and develop. But I just was in a weird place 2019, 2020 with not being able to move forward to some of that stuff. And so when COVID hit, that's when I was like, man, with all this time on my hands, I'm going to figure out how to do this myself. There's got to be a way to recreate this technology. And so I had 2 of my best friends were, one's a software engineer, one's a mechanical engineer. I was just asking questions like, how could I make something like this? And they pointed me in the right direction of, you need like an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi that can talk to a circuit. And that circuit, if you just can buy like the switch mat. So I called a couple switch mat companies to send me some demos. So I basically had the stuff, and I collected over the next 2 or 3 months all the things that I felt were necessary to actually make this thing happen. But then I wasn't smart enough to actually write the firmware, measure the ground contact times in the circuits through the switch mat, and have it be populated. And that's where I, like, of course, I consider myself intuitive, but that's like a college degree's worth of knowledge you would need to do that. So here's what I did, man. I got on the Nextdoor app. I don't know if you're familiar with Nextdoor.
Yeah.
It's like April of 2020. The world is shut down. And I tossed it out there. I'm just like, hey, are there any electrical engineers in the neighborhood? Because I have all this stuff. I had a picture of everything. I was like, if anybody's just bored and wants to do this hobby with me, I'm just looking for some help. Next thing, man, it was like the next day, old Larry Eaton hits me up. And he's in his 60s. He's my business partner now. And he's an electrical engineer, graduated from Georgia Tech, owned his own business where he created medical devices and all these other things and he does exactly this. Like he writes firmware. He's a software engineer too, does all this. And he's, I think I can help you. And fast forward a couple months later, we have our first ever prototype, and we didn't use it as an app at the time. We actually had a little display that showed the numbers. And so we realized it was a viable business idea eventually later that next year, to where we actually founded an LLC and Iowa football, about 8 of them. And that's when we knew, okay, this thing is actually has some legs to it. Not that I ever really cared to be a businessman, but I was just so passionate about a more affordable and good, trustworthy switch mat that could also be out there in the scene outside of Just Jump, because some of the issues that Just Jump had with the cord breaking and the customer support lacking with getting it replaced and all that.
What's up, y'all? Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about another one of our sponsors, Vitruve. I've been utilizing Vitruve for a while now, and I absolutely love the convenience of this app. The encoder is at a price that you cannot beat compared to the competitors. Also, I don't personally like the camera apps. I've known that they continue to break down, and I really enjoy having this encoder attached directly to the bar. Vitruve does that. Not only does it do that, but it'll show me velocity loss during the set, shows me average velocity, all of it right within the app. Not only that, for the app on the individual athlete, there's a Vitruve Teams app where now, as the coach, I can see all the results from my athletes. I can API that into my TeamBuildr, and now everything that I'm trying to do, get better competition, better intent in the weight room, I am able to do with Vitruve. If you want more information about them, click the link down below, or you can ask us questions directly at service@strengthcoachnetwork.com, and we would love to answer those questions for you.
So, yeah, man, that was 4 years ago. So it's just crazy where we're at now. I think we're in like 30 different countries across the world. And Europe has been just a huge one for us, which is just wild that there isn't somebody like me that's also making a Plyomat over there. But it's just crazy, man, how it came to be. But we're in the process of redesigning the controller and putting a display on there, and also offering a new mobile app. We're going to redesign the mobile app. That stuff's expensive. And so it's being announced here, right here on the Strength Coach Network, that we're going to have some big upgrades coming. We're excited about, but man, it's been a crazy journey for sure.
That you heard it here first, folks. That's pretty cool. The RSI stuff, you talked about it before, single leg. Are you doing single leg, land, double leg, eventual land at the very end for the contact being single leg because you're assessing it? How are you going about doing that? And the reason I ask is DeMarco, he's the one that put it in my head, hey, if you're going to do a single leg assessment, let them ultimately land on 2 legs so that way you can truly measure single leg power, strength, whatever you're trying to assess.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we do. We do I call it a single leg, 1 hop max RSI. So the athlete's off the mat and they're bouncing on 1 leg. They hop forward. I always tell them to go forward and not up. Forward into the mat. They attack the mat, right? Being as reactive as they can on that left foot, and they get to land on 2. So I have lots of data going to 2.5 years now at Triple F on that exact test. So I do that right after I do the 5 hop or the 5 jump with the 2 legs. And yeah, it's been interesting. And it doesn't necessarily, I'm running correlations pretty frequently to see what single leg max RSI is actually telling us, other than, hey, I'm really good and springing off of 1 foot. You could see how well it carries over to foot strength and anticipation, but it doesn't quite carry over to max speed the way that I thought it would. It actually carries over more to the early stages of sprinting, like 5 and 15 yards, which I thought was interesting. But you think about top speed mechanics, and they'd be able to like quickly turn over that foot in a rapid contact time, like Usain Bolt at his peak speed when he has world record 100-meter dash, he was at 0.09 contact time. Like that's how much time he's spending on the floor. So I assumed with max velocity upright mechanics running that the cycling of the foot and how much force you can produce would be more carryover. But that's also like world-class sprinters. And we're talking about kids that we have mostly that are not track athletes. So it does show more a characteristic of foot strength and anticipation that is typical of the early phases of sprinting. So I'm not 1,000% sold on that everybody needs to do this type of single leg RSI testing as opposed to just bilateral. I think we need more data to determine that you need to do all these types of RSI tests. I think it helps build context, because you also can't just say that an athlete is only reactive just because of a two-leg test. I do have athletes that are not very good at the two-legged one and are really good at the single-leg one. It builds more context around reactivity, but then here you are having to do 2, 3, 4 different RSI type tests to help with that context, which in a group setting is very time consuming. Depends on how many Plyomats you have. Plus, it's a little awkward for some kids to do that one leg. It's like for a long jumper, makes perfect sense. All right, I got to just push into this and pop off the ground as explosively as I can off of 1 foot. For most kids, it's not as straightforward, so it's a little bit of a learning curve to it. But yeah, I feel like we just need some more information and run some more different correlations on its value. But we're testing it, and we do have scores. We are standardizing it, and kids can score a freak on single leg RSI, get a 3.0 on one leg with just that one max effort hop, like a pop and then land on 2. We have several kids that are in the low 3s, and those are some of our better athletes. But as far as what it's telling us about other areas of athleticism, that's what I'm waiting to see once we collect more data on it.
I could go down the RSI rabbit hole, like you said. That's how we got connected, and that's how I obviously did my dissertation on it. Is there anything that you would have the opportunity right now, being able to talk to a lot of different strength coaches in a lot of different sectors of it? What would be your overall last message, last thing that you kind of want to say while you've got everybody's attention right now?
Man, that's a good one. I would just say keep it about the kids in this crazy world of transfer portal and how broken our youth sports structure is in our country, just because of how everything, it's a capitalistic society. Everybody's out to make $1 off of kids, and just choose to be the one that's not wired that way. Still keep it about the kids. Still remember our profession is about who it is that you're responsible for. We're caretakers of people, and it's okay that we're not getting the limelight. Like, I know everybody's trying to make some money here and there and build their profiles and stuff, but and I've fallen trapped to that too a little bit. But man, at the end of the day, the real value of anything that we do as coaches is to see our athletes succeed and to see them become better men and women in society, and teaching them how much character matters. And so here we are, we spent 50 minutes talking about metrics and objective data and what people spend money on. But my main interest is on helping these kids build character at the end of the day. And so that moving here to Triple F has allowed me the opportunity to really do that. And it's a slower pace in the private sector. There's a lot of downtime before a session, after a session. Parents drop their kids off sometimes in the middle of the day. We have kids just in the facility, get some curls in or hanging out. When in the high school setting I was at, in the college setting, it's a little bit more fast paced. You already see the kid all day anyway, so it's not as novel of an opportunity to have a conversation, or to challenge them on something other than it feeling very formal. Whereas in this environment, it's a pretty cool space to love on kids and to challenge them. And that's a note to myself too. Like, it's so easy to get caught up on what the world tells us is valuable, what I think makes the kid, why God placed us in that kid's life in the first place, and just really reminding ourselves of that is crucial. And for our profession to continue to be what it's supposed to be, you know what I'm saying? And strength coaches, we're supposed to be servants. That's how I view it anyway. We're supposed to be in the background, just uplifting and building and breaking down too, for the purpose of growing people. But sometimes it's easy to lose that. So
couldn't agree with you more. I could talk to you all day, but I'm going to respect your time. And thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing with us today, Rich.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate all you do, man, for the profession.
Thank you. Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.